players away from him. And I don't know, Jays fans were kind of complaining that we got the short end of the stick, but it may look like Mets fans may be kind of growing impatient, and they're kind of looking still for the best of Marcus Stroman.
I think the reason, Rob, I don't know if you're going to say anything, but I don't know. I think the reason Jays fans and every other team except for the Mets were all laughing at the Blue Jays is because technically Kay and Simeon Woods-Richardson are not pipeline top 100 prospects. I mean, I think you guys can both agree with me that if Simeon Woods-Richardson continues to pitch the way he is definitely going to be in the top 100 next year.
Yep.
I think there's no doubt about it. And Anthony Kay could be a big leaguer this year. So, I mean, things are looking better by the day for the Blue Jays when it comes to their pitching staff.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny how when the trade was made, everyone was saying, like, well, not all Mets fans, but a good portion of them were playing Anthony Kay and Simeon Woods-Richardson off as these, bound to be ace starters who they traded for Marcus Stroman, a guy who might not even pitch a postseason game for them, being that the Mets were on the outside looking in and probably won't make the playoffs. And the Blue Jays, on the other hand, were, they were just saying that these guys are just guys who, might not ever amount to anything in the big league. So it's fun to see all these people jump the gun so early. But early returns looking really good for the Blue Jays, I'd say. And once again, I made this point right after the Deadline podcast about how these prospect pools, it's all opinionated and they can change, they can go up and down as time progresses and as players grow through the pipelines. And I think the Cleveland Indians are a good example to this because they traded Trevor Bauer, and the guy that they basically replaced him in the rotation, Aaron Savali, was their 15th ranked prospect. Not even 15th in MLB, their own 15th ranked prospect, and he's been dominant for them. So that just goes to show that internal scouting can sometimes be more valuable than these prospect pools.
And can we also talk about that Pete Alonso was not a top 100 prospect?
There you go.
And he's going to win Rookie of the Year, so there you go. Or is it? Yeah, he's definitely going to win Rookie of the Year.
And it looks
one guy who is definitely a top 100 prospect, Nate Pearson, has been absolutely dominant himself in AAA. You want to shed some light about that, Mo?
Yeah, so Nate Pearson, he was recently promoted to the Bisons next week, and I've been watching his starts through a Twitter named by Ryan DeFrancisco, who's a great page on Twitter who shows the Bisons pitching staff and all the minor leagues. So Nate Pearson, 23 years old, was promoted last week. His first start was on the 20th, where he pitched 7 innings, 3 hits and 3 strikeouts, and then recently on the 25th, he dominated once again. The only mistake he made in this past game on the 25th was a 2-run shot to, I believe, the Red Sox third best prospect, Bobby DeBellick. And he did have 7 strikeouts, but man, Nate Pearson is super filthy. When he can get you with that 99 fastball and then buckle you down with this nasty curve, it's certainly very nasty. It's unhittable almost. And to say that he could be up possibly next year, the Jays have already shut down. Well, he has already shut down that he will not be a September call-up. He says he's going to go home and take the time off after the Bison season is over. But it's very promising, to say the least, that Nate Pearson keeps dominating at every single level, and we got him at a compensation pick for Edwin Encarnacion, so it's very exciting for the future of the Blue Jays, and he's going to have very high expectations for next year with these fans. They will want him to be the ace next season, and hey, he's got ace-type stuff. There's no kidding about that. He throws high cheese, and he has very good secondary pitches, so he's pretty much polished, but a little bit more seasoning down in Buffalo. Probably in April next season, then you'll see him up in May, but very promising to say the least.
And going off of Nate Pearson, I was going to say 2 things. Number one, I think it was either the first game he pitched in Buffalo or the second one where he just blew Ronald Torreyes away. Now, I mean, he's not a great big league player, Ronald Torreyes, obviously, but he's a guy who's had big league time, and he blew him away with a 99-mile-an-hour fastball. I think it was up and in. It just made him look silly. Second thing, in his second start, you talked about making that one mistake, the 2-run home run. And that was in the second inning of that ball game. Yeah, I think he ended up going 6, if I'm not mistaken. After that home run he gave up, he didn't allow a hit. And we've gotten so used to seeing Blue Jays pitchers, especially this year, usually have one awful inning. And to watch Nate Pearson give up the 2 runs, ideally it's the minors, I get it, but to watch him go out there and give up the 2-run shot and then throw a no-hit ball the rest of the way, he continues to impress me night in, night out. It's awesome.
I just can't wait till he comes up. It's just, you guys have talked about everything that, there's nothing more for me to say really, because this guy, I wouldn't say he's major league ready right now, but probably had the Blue Jays been in contention, might have seen a bigger role. But now that the season is pretty much a wrap, it's better that he gets a little more rest, a little more getting ready for next season when it'll likely matter a lot more. I just wanted to talk about that. But also, now we can segue unless you guys want to add anything about Josh Donaldson, his return back to Toronto, coming back on Tuesday with the Braves, got a standing ovation and a video tribute to his return to Toronto. Unfortunately for Donaldson, didn't have himself the greatest series, went 0 for 7 with 2 walks, didn't get a hit, and he had the biggest at-bat in the game on Tuesday. We had the bases loaded in a 1-run game, and Derek Law got him to pop out. So you guys want to talk about Josh Donaldson's return to Toronto after what was a very impressive career with the Blue Jays?
Yeah.
I mean, it was so go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. I mean, it was well-deserved, obviously, and there's all that debate of where he ranks in the all-time Blue Jays list, and we could sit here and debate that all day if we wanted. But in the end, the guy he won the AL MVP. I mean, he was the staple at third base. He was the bringer of rain. He was arguably everyone's favorite player, other than Bautista and Edwin. And he well-deserved ovation, well-deserved video tribute. Now, as for him popping out in that, I don't know which inning that was it the 7th or the 8th? I'm not sure.
7th.
I believe.
7th? Okay.
I think so. I'm not sure.
How many times have we seen ex-Blue Jays or ex-Leaf or Raptors or whatever get in those situations and kill the Toronto team? I mean, my goodness, and to see him pop out, look, I got to admit, I was kind of happy. It was kind of like, got him. But it would have been fitting, though, for Josh Donaldson to crunch a grand slam off of Derek Law there, wouldn't it?
So I was actually at the game on Tuesday when Josh Donaldson came back to Toronto, and he was very into the. He seemed very into the fans, kind of. He was very appreciative of time in Toronto. On the video board when it was up, he was very happy, it looked like, when he was staring at it. All the fans, he would go before the game signing autographs. Just all the fans loved him for his time in Toronto, and he was a very good player. That 2015 season, man, it was just such a good season. The MVP candidate. And speaking of that pop-up, the first play of the game, I think, Bo Bichette grounded into Josh Donaldson. He airmails the ball, so all the fans went nuts when he did that. So Bo Bichette went to second. But yeah, Josh Donaldson, he's very scary. The Braves did bet on him this past season with Alex Anthopoulos, gave him a 1-year, $23 million contract, and now he's proven that even at the age of 34, he's going to be lined up to get a multi-year contract for sure. I believe he already has 32 home runs, 76 RBIs. He's only hitting .259, but he still has an OPS well over 900. And an on-base of 374. So kind of like his 2017 season. And we can obviously admit that 2018 was an outlier that last season. So for the Jays, it was hard to move on for Josh Donaldson. But re-signing Josh Donaldson would certainly have pushed back the development of Vladimir Jr. So as much as JD, the bringer of rain, did do for the city, I think it was time to move on just for the circumstance. But he certainly did love his time in Toronto, and you can definitely tell watching him live.
Yeah, it's a little bittersweet to watch a lot of people, I guess, talk about Josh Donaldson's time in Toronto in sort of a somber mood because of how ugly it ended. But I think at the end of the day, it was good for both clubs to sort of move on now. And I think each club has moved on pretty well because Josh Donaldson, he was able to get that, like you mentioned, that 1-year prove-it deal, and he's really proved it this year with an excellent season for the Braves, the playoff-bound Braves. And for the Blue Jays on the other end, they replaced him with what looks to be a stud third baseman for the future. So I think it was good that the Blue Jays and their fans were able to reflect on Donaldson's time with the Blue Jays as opposed to just talking about all the controversies that were going on last year. So it was kind of refreshing seeing a bit of a happy mood at the Rogers Center in a very exciting game. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to the game. I was at Edwin's return in 2017, and I was at Jose's return last year, but my plans sort of fell through. It would have been nice to pay the visit, but I'm glad you went, Mo, and had a good time.
Yeah, for sure. And Josh Donaldson certainly understood the business when he was talking to reporters. Unlike Marcus Stroman, Josh Donaldson was certainly talking about how it's their team, Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, and they get to do what they want. So Josh Donaldson is certainly a class act, and it's great to see him again in the city.
Well, what's the next topic, Mo? What do we got now?
I think we want to talk about what should the goals be for the rest of the season for the Jays, starting off with September call-ups. So before that, Devin Travis was ruled out for the 2019 season, so another lost year for the poor second baseman. Just so brutal. Just wishing Devin Travis the best of luck. Just really wanted the guy to see him healthy, but it's safe to say his days are over as a Blue Jay. We said that many times on this podcast. But as for September call-ups, there's going to be a gradual influx of call-ups for these next few days. There's going to be guys that are not on the 40-man roster that aren't Rule 5 eligible, so they can choose to free that over the winter. But more realistically, do you guys think we'll see the Thomas Panones, the Reed Foleys, the Schaefers, the Brock Stewarts, or like the J.D. Davis is up? Or may the Blue Jays surprise us and we see the Zach Jackson, the Ty Tice, the Zach McClelland, Anthony Alford, just those young fireballers instead of these kind of like veteran prove-it kind of pitchers, especially Sean Reed Foley, whose last start in Buffalo, I believe it was 2 days ago, and he was brutal again. So what do you guys expect for the Jays' September call-ups?
I personally see it being kind of like bringing in it's going to be a mixture for me because I look at the Buffalo bullpen, and you mentioned a few of the guys that we've kind of talked about in the podcast a few times, a guy like Zach Jackson and Jackson McClelland. Both of these guys are not very young guys. They're both born in 1994. They've both been through the minor league system for the Blue Jays since, McClelland's been through 2015, and Zach Jackson's been through the minor leagues for the Blue Jays since 2016. So they've been through the ropes. They're at that age now where you kind of want to see them at the big league level. They've had pretty good seasons. Zach Jackson struggled lately, but we talked a while ago about how he was dominating down there. I think you're going to see a couple of those guys. I don't think Ty Tice is it yet, just because he's 23. I think that's the way. I think that's why you'd keep him in Buffalo, probably to start next season, and if an injury occurs, he's kind of like your first guy up, because you want to see what he's all about. But I think you're going to see a lot of Brock Stewart, Thomas Pannone, guys we've already kind of seen, and it sucks, but again, I think to properly develop the team the way they should, I don't think they need to make any drastic moves, but hey, we could see an Anthony K soon, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, really. I think you'll see somewhat of a mixture between, as you mentioned, some of the more blue-chip type prospects. I mean, they're not blue-chip type prospects, but more of the interesting guys, I should say, for lack of a better term. And a mixture of those guys and also the more underwhelming names, as you mentioned, the Brock Stewarts, the Panones of the world. So, I'm hoping we can see guys like Zach Jackson get up here because of the seasons that they've had at the minor league level, but you'll definitely see quite a bit of guys who were up here before and basically essentially depth guys who are going to be on the major league roster. The roster has expanded as it is really every year.
In theory, it could also be a chance for the Jays to look at Anthony Alford, who is back from the injured list at AAA. He's out of options next spring. His offensive numbers, he was heating up. They're just 266, 345, and 417, 6 home runs. But maybe the Jays prefer to give others bats down the stretch, but I certainly want to see Anthony Alford get one more chance. I truly believe in him, and I really want to see him in the everyday center fielder role for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we hope so, but we'll just have to see. It's tough to predict these kind of things because you just don't really know for sure who the organization is going to bring in when the roster expand. And don't forget, the bigger benches, bigger bullpens, but you can only have 40 guys, right? So certainly some